I'm Nisha DeGaring.
And I'm Doug Jessup. Welcome to this episode of Family Heritage Stories, where we talk about what makes us who we are. Things like traditions, values, and culture.
How are these passed down through generations? Through words, through deeds, through stories.
How do you want to be remembered? It's not just a question for old people, okay? I remember in junior high, we had a writing assignment to write down our own obituary. A little macabre, but at the same time, I understand now what they were trying to do. They were saying, what are you doing now? But also, what can you do in the future to make sure that you are remembered the way you want to be remembered? Some people may recognize you because you are what we affectionately call a reality star.
Yes, there's many of those today, it seems, right? Yes, for dancing, my husband and I are most well known for being the only married couple as well to be on So You Think You Can Dance.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah, and only married couple ever because we made it separately because they choose 10 boys and 10 girls.
Okay.
So we initially auditioned together, then the rest of the audition process was separate.
Okay.
So it was really amazing to both make one of those 10 spots.
Mm-hmm.
And we went through the whole season with separate partners.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, and which was amazing to be able to like watch and support each other, but also double the stress.
Yeah, I bet.
But it was really incredible because we both made it to the finale.
Okay.
And everybody left gets to dance with the other. So all 3 girls danced with all 3 boys. So we finally got to dance with each other in the finale, which was just really special.
Okay, and maybe this is an obvious question, but you go, okay, so you've got this, but you're married, okay?
Yeah.
You know, you've got that yin and yang, you got that, you know, that chemistry. Was there a difference between dancing, and I don't want to get you in trouble, but you know, was there a difference between dancing with your husband versus the other guys?
Well, I mean, one thing we pride ourselves on, right, as professionals is being able to create that, right?
That illusion.
Yeah, it's acting, right? That's dancing is telling a story through movement and performance. But of course, for us, that connection in our dancing is very unique to us because we've been together a long time. But I was blessed with an amazing partner who they like to talk a lot about how I had even greater chemistry with, but pretty sure that was part of the reality TV.
Yeah. Walk me through the journey that you had when you were a teenager.
Yes. I'm grateful for dance, having said that, because it was such a gift to have something I loved so much to push me through these enormous challenges. So I grew up dancing 5 hours a day and literally went from that to overnight fighting for my life, and woke up one morning and had pain in every joint and muscle and could hardly move and high temperature and all the feelings of sickness, but at a whole new level than I'd ever experienced. I was called the Energizer Bunny. You know, all I did was love life and dance, and now that was the start of a 4.5-year journey. I went to all the top specialists you can think of, every hospital, every scan and test that existed at the time, I did. And I was a mystery. I had a rare viral infection. They couldn't diagnose. They could see my organs shutting down. They could see how sick I was, and literally was sent home to die. Was told they didn't know what to do. I'd make medical history books. And I'll never forget, particularly a moment that came to define my life, as I had the doctor come in, and I'll never forget because it was one of those really stark rooms where there was just no color, nothing warm, and he rolled up one of those, you know, chairs they all have, looked at me, took a deep breath, and said, "You need to accept you're not going to live past your teenage years. You'll never dance again, never have kids, never live a normal life." And it's just crazy because he went down this long list of what I would never do. And I was 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
My life had changed overnight, and I can't even describe what that moment felt like. I've never felt so overwhelmed and defeated, and just how could this have happened to my life? And I looked down and mustered the greatest courage I've had at that time and looked up and said, "I don't accept this."
Wow.
And it was such a defining moment that I've drawn from, because I decided right then that I would not allow other people's limitations, to become mine. And I knew I was coming into the greatest fight of my life, but I decided that rather than to try to not die, I was going to put all my energy and efforts into living and defy the odds. If there was a chance, I sure was going to fight for them. And it was a long journey. I was out of dance for 6 years.
Wow.
And it was a long road from being able to get out of my bed and go to the bathroom to being able to walk one house to around the block to rebuilding my strength. And it was the start of me really understanding our incredible mind-body connection and how amazing our bodies are and our human spirits. And that truly when they're aligned, there's nothing that we can't overcome. And I was a witness of that. And that's why even being on So You Think You Can Dance was so miraculous, extra for me and my family, because it was so rigorous on the body. And I, at one time in my life, literally didn't have the strength to speak.
How old were you when you were on dancing?
I was 26 years old. Already had graduated college, already had a competitive career, but I was out of dance from 14 to almost 20.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. And then from there, 6 years later, you were on national television doing what you love.
Yes. After, missing what is supposed to be the most pivotal time in any athletic or performer's time, right? From your teenage years into your 20s. So the amazing thing is that something I didn't understand then that is well discussed now, and what I do now with neuroscience and the brain is we understand that anything you picture with such clarity and detail, your brain doesn't know the difference between something that's actually happened and one you're imagining. And of course I didn't understand that then, but during all my tests and exams during all those years, rather than just lay there in the tubes and the MRIs, and I would dance in my mind. And I would go through my routines, and I would go through like I was with class, and I would feel it so much in my heart. I remember laying there in tears, not from despair, but joy of what I one day planned to experience again. And I have no doubt that that was so pivotal in me being able to come back the way I did, because for those 6 years, I was patterning within my brain and body the feeling of dance without physically being able to do it.
Strange question, Ashley.
Yeah.
What dance were you doing in your mind?
I had a whole long list.
Yeah.
So at that time, when I got sick, I did all styles of dance: ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, contemporary, ballroom. And so I would go through all the list. And so thankfully I had a long repertoire to move through. And then sometimes it was just creating, like I would have had I actually been physically moving to music. But I know that helped me come back in a way that, again, they say if you miss all that pivotal time in your teenage years, it's hard to compete with those who had those 6 years and were dancing 5 hours a day. So that was a miracle, I guess, in itself. But passion and hard work definitely go a long way.
The last words that my grandfather said were, "Please remember me." This is Doug Jessup. It would be my honor to help you share your story with a private in-studio interview with a video for you to keep. Go to FamilyHeritageStories.com for pricing and to schedule your interview. We all benefit from heroes among us. Now, they're going to say, it's just part of the job. But it's more than that. It's time for Hero Salute Stories. I want to take you back
Every son of liberty,
about 100 years to 1917, specifically to the spring of 1917. The world is in what's called the Great War. It was also called the War to End All Wars. It didn't quite work out that way, but The United States got involved in the spring of 1917. And there was a young man that was about 26, 27 years old. His name was Arthur Leroy Maurer, guy from a little town called Fairview, Utah. He decided to enlist. And so he was sent to the University of Utah to do his initial training. And then he was shipped out to Omaha, Nebraska. And what is he doing there? He is being trained to be part of the balloon division. Not kidding. Okay, hot air balloon division. They had not quite got the airplanes going as part of warfare, but you know, the dirigibles, okay, we got those. So he was out there and doing his thing. Well, he got sick. A lot of people got sick in Omaha, actually. And you know, the thing that's interesting is, why do we know all this stuff? Because somebody wrote it down. Somebody took the time to leave their mark. And to me, stories do have power. And one of the most powerful things is the letter that survived over 100 years from Arthur to his parents. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read that letter, kind of let you go back in time. Florence Field, October 16th, 1918. My dearest folks, received the most welcome cake and the envelopes the other day. Glad to hear from you. I'm getting well the Spanish flu now and will have almost had it for about 3 days, but was quite sick the other night. My fever went to 105 degrees. It's mighty bad news. From 10 to 30 people are dying every day in Omaha, and many are dying at the fort. 2 more men of the 46 died in the hospital night before last. Out of less than 150 men in our company, 44 are in the hospital and 25 were quite sick in their tents. The ones who can fear this dreaded disease the most, according to the doctors, are those who are diseased and the heavy tobacco users. 2 airships came here yesterday to be used with our balloons. This company is all prepared and ready to leave. We are well. Even with the replacements from the other companies to fill up, we should be leaving in the next few days, if not more than 2 weeks. I don't think the war will last much longer, according to the Omaha newspapers. Tell me if you received my suit order and my moving orders. Goodbye and God bless you. Your loving son, Arthur. I realize that letter was over 100 years old, but isn't it amazing that somebody wrote it down? Somebody left their mark by recording that, and now we have that. What's sad is the fact that that was the last letter that he sent his parents. He died 7 days later of the pneumonia. Complications from the influenza. Human connection. That's what it's about. From cave art to doing videos on our phones for our grandkids. We're just trying to make a connection with people that we know and love. Sometimes these stories stand the test of time. Recently, I did a bunch of interviews with some veterans from a very special unit, the 159th Medical Evacuation Group called Dustoff, served in Vietnam. What is the value and the power of a story? Ask Mara.
It's priceless. It's priceless to me because when I was first sitting with the guys listening to their stories, it's something you just can't get back. And there's a lot of stories I wish I would have had recorded from my dad, my mom, my grandparents. So at least we were able to get these stories recorded. And to have them videoed and digitized is key, because the younger generation, you know, sitting with my nephews, doing homework with them over COVID, they weren't looking at books, they were looking at screens. And they can look at this on a screen.
A lot of traditions are based around food, okay? Heritage is based around food. I mean, think about it. You know, you got a certain kind of music and you can hear that music in the background and you think, okay, I'm back in Italy and we're eating whatever it is. I don't know. It's interesting. A lot of those things that are passed down from generation are not in these clean sheets. No. They're these books. You know, they're thick. You know, they have smudges on those recipes because they've been used, they've been loved. Do you have a recipe from Grandma? Hi, this is Doug Jessup. Welcome to this episode of A Recipe from Grandma. But, you know, in talking with Krista, it just might be a recipe from Grandpa because now, Krista, you're a cookbook chef. You come from a food family, but you also have a history, if I will, from very good cooks that just so happen to be guys. So tell me a little bit of the family history.
I mean, really, we like to eat.
Who doesn't? Come on, you know, you're Italian, yeah.
So growing up in a food family, the Granato family, yeah, all of my core memories really do involve food. My grandpa, Francesco Salvatore Granato, he came over from Italy with his family. He was third of 11 children. Okay, and they were from San Giovanni in Fiore, which is down in southern Italy, just across from Sicily. And they came over and they lived in northern Utah, and they missed some of the food from home. This was back when you couldn't just go to the grocery store and buy your olive oil and your vinegar and your great ingredients that we can now. So he started selling meat and cheese door to door in his Italian community and grew it from there.
Wow, okay. Now, you kind of left out a little bit, okay? She's being a little modest because, so her grandfather started this group called, you know, Granatos, and then I remember your dad. You know, he had this wonderful deli and had those sandwiches and the olives and all that great stuff. And so this recipe is kind of in your blood.
It is, and I will say this isn't a recipe that's like on one of the cards. I do have some of those. This is really just based on the fact that I believe, and I was taught growing up, that the best recipes, Italian or otherwise, are just based on some simple ingredients. A few simple ingredients, you take it and make it your own. You add in or take out what you don't want. And I knew you were going to mention olives. So I actually brought you some olives. One thing I loved about cooking with my grandma Granato is that she would have little snacks while we were making whatever it was we were making. So, do you want me to tell you about this recipe today?
Yes, please. Well, first, you got these funky looking pastas.
Yes.
Okay, now I got to ask it when you come to simple questions. I just don't know. What is in pasta? What makes good pasta?
Okay, it's kind of complicated.
Yeah.
It's flour and eggs for the most part.
Okay, that's it.
That's it.
Wow.
And then a labor of love to, you know, you make the well and you put the eggs in and you get very messy and it's just a lot of fun. My daughter and I love to make homemade pasta, so we'll do that another day.
Okay. So what's this kind of pasta called?
Pappardelle. Now this is a fun one. It's fun to say, it's fun to eat, it's fun to gobble up, and it literally means to gobble up. That is the Italian translation. From Italian to English, pappardelle means to gobble up. And I love the different names of pastas. Farfalle is my favorite. It means butterfly. I love butterfly. So we took the pappardelle pasta. Now I just bought this. It came just like this in a fun little nest. It comes dry. You put it in your boiling water for about 10 minutes. Let it do its thing. While that is cooking, I simply browned up some mild Italian sausage, about 6 minutes. Added in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then just a fun summer lineup of vegetables. We've got summer squash, zucchini, sweet onion, and some red bell pepper, a little salt and pepper. Let all of that just simmer down, cover it, and it just marries together so well. It really doesn't need anything other than that. All of the natural flavors that it already brings. I love the pop of flavor you get from the mild Italian sausage, and then a little fresh basil, some Parmesan cheese, and dinner is served.
Voila. Okay, now just to get into little details to make sure I understand this right. Okay, so you brown the sausage in olive oil, okay, and then you add the vegetables. The pasta is doing its own thing. Why olive oil?
I love olive oil. A nice extra virgin olive oil isn't going to overpower the flavor of anything. It just adds a little nuttiness to it, and it can cook at a relatively high temperature, so you don't have to worry about your vegetables burning. They can just brown. I love to roast vegetables in olive oil as well for that reason.
Perfect. Wow. Okay. And again, this is called?
Pappardelle pasta with Italian sausage. And then you add in what you want from there.
Okay, pappardelle sausage. Okay, you know, and the ingredients are right here. And then, of course, you know, it's in her cookbook. So with another episode of A Recipe from Grandma, or sometimes Grandpa, I'm Doug Jessup with Krista Numbers.
What does remember where you came from mean to you?
Being a family doctor is really satisfying. You serve infants to adults to adolescents to the elderly, And you get to know and love people in all those spaces. And it really sculpts you as a person. I think it helps you be more compassionate and more kind, and if you allow it to, right? Unfortunately, the current system is difficult to navigate, and it does kind of the opposite. And so I've my own practice now, and I deliver the goods, and I love it, and it sculpts me as a person. And I would say the lesson is to know your core value, the reason why you went into this, and hold to that despite all the distractions, despite all the bureaucracy and all the silliness and all the inefficiencies and all of those things that are really fatiguing on the system and on docs specifically. But stay true to that why, and to know your core value, and hold on to that. That's the key.
You're a new doctor. You're now come, to this place out in Moab, Utah, which you may or may not have even been to before. Was there a patient that you remember, one of those early patients, where you treated them and you said, "This is why I'm a doctor"?
I have so many of those people. One of my, this is a hard one. So this gal, one of my favorite people, I know her name, but I can't say it. She had AML. It's a type of leukemia, and she underwent all the treatments at the Huntsman and recovered for a bit. Beautiful woman. She's an artist. She had all these paintings. In fact, I hung them up in my office, and we just had a great relationship. I took care of her husband, her daughter. I delivered her grandbaby. So the relationship is deep. And she came to my office about a year after being in remission, and she said, "Dr. Sanders, it came back." And during chemo, radiation, all that, I managed all of it, and I hospitalized her multiple times, and I saw the whole ongoings. I would collaborate with the Huntsman oncologist team and put her on different medicines, IV, to help her and stuff. And she came to me and she smiled and she was so happy. And I said, "What is going on? This is not great news, right?" And she said, "Dr. Sanders, I'm going to go to Lake Powell and swim with my grandbabies." And I'm pretty well composed in my career. I try not to lose it. I lost it. Luckily, she was the last patient of the day, and it was deep sobs. It wasn't sobs of sadness per se. It was how beautiful her journey was and how beautiful she looked at the face of life and death, and she smiled, and she went and swam with her grandbabies, and it was lovely. And I went home raw, just scrubbed with an old wire brush, but I knew that this was my calling. I needed to do this, and I love it. And it is hard. It's hard, but it's beautiful. Hard.
So did that woman end up passing then?
She did. Yeah. Just before she passed, we set up a service project because she was pretty proud of her yard, but it had been a year of chemo and stuff, and it went unkept. And so we gathered a bunch of troops and we went out there, and we burned this giant pile of tumbleweeds and just worked really hard. And she came out and she gave everybody a hug, me a hug, and it was great just to give back a little bit to her and let her see her yard back in tip-top shape before she passed. But yeah, and I was her hospice doc too and helped her on through that.
Objects with stories are treasures remembered.
Brandon Fugel, what do we have here?
Here we have a 1611 first printing of the King James Bible. This is a very unique copy, one of the most rare in existence. Why? It really has only had two owners. The parish church outside of Cambridge, England, that took delivery in 1611, and myself. It made its way to me in September of 2019 as it was auctioned for the purpose of making repairs to the ancient 1200 AD structure where it resided for hundreds of years. Inside the cover, you have the inscription AD 1611, Bible belonging to the parish church, Melbourne. Some of the most striking portions are found in the genealogies of the Holy Scriptures that was commissioned by King James specifically for this first printing that literally changed history. Here you have God, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden depicted, as well as a whole line of genealogies that really open this very special ancient scripture. The first batch that were being printed, which we know for a fact that this was one of the very first to come off of the press, had an error in the book of Ruth, where they called Ruth a he, not a she. Upon finding the error, the printers had to reset the type for that whole page and then commence the work of the rest of the printing. This is one of the great he Bibles of the 1611 first printing, making this even more rare. So not only does this have an unbroken provenance or chain of title directly to me from the date of its printing, but this is also one of the very rare he Bible versions.
What makes you smile? Spry mouthwash helps me smile. I think it might help you too. It's our honor to be able to help people remember where they came from.
If stories are not passed down from generation to generation, they become lost. And it's as if these people never lived.
How do you want to be remembered? With another episode of Family Heritage Stories, I'm Doug Jessup.
And I'm Nisha DeGaring.